older people living in care homes are more likely to have a fall than those who live in the community. So here are some of the things care homes can do to help reduce the risk of their residents falling. However, if you do live or help care for someone in the community, then these examples are still relevant.
I think promotion of independence, which is often overlooked when people go into care homes, so encourage people to do as much as they can for themselves under the sort of guidance of staff. Encourage people to mobilise if they're able to, making sure that they participate in activity physically but also staying mentally alert as well. So having activity programmes where they're challenged sort of mentally, you know, bingo, things like that are often used. Because research has shown that if you stay mentally and physically alert, then the recovery from a fall is normally a lot quicker from those who aren't. It can be through things like washing and dressing, so encouraging somebody to do as much of that as they can. There's loads of movements that you do. There's the, you know, sort of bending down, there's stretching, lots of different ways of keeping a person active, you know, sort of doing that. Simply walking from their room to the day room, if they go there, encouraging a person to do that, and also finding out what that person enjoys and focusing on that, get them to do something that they actually, you know, enjoy doing and make it more meaningful for them.
Staying physically active plays an important part in reducing the risk of a fall. People of all ages should aim to be active on most days of the week. To help stay as physically independent as possible and reduce the risk of a fall, older people should do muscle strengthening exercises at least 2 or 3 times a week, with focus on the lower limbs.
There's lots of things they can do in the community, whether they go to the GP and seek advice for other activities, going to the gym. There's 50, 60 plus classes out there. There's yoga, there's Pilates, there's all sorts of activities they can do to stay as active as possible.
There's an awful lot you can do to make sure that your bones stay as strong as you can make them. Physical activity and exercise is absolutely vital. The sort of exercise needs to challenge your lower limbs to be bone loaded. So if you was a person that liked to use water to exercise, swimming is very good for your heart and your lungs and your circulation, but to make that useful for bone strength and enhancing the recycling cellular program, you need to walk through the water. It's a sort of exercise that challenges and gives a degree of resistance.
An important aspect of staying mobile is being able to go from sitting in a chair to standing up in a safe way.
Obviously, when we're doing sit to stand, the technique's got to be correct to start with. Obviously, people are sitting a little bit more probably when they're a little bit older, but they obviously need to get out of a chair and they need to do it in the safest way. So I use a technique to help them get out of the chair as safely as possible. They get the strength in their legs, which is the most important thing, and obviously once they're up, then they can get on with their everyday activities and daily life. When they first stood up, I'd say take a minute, perhaps do a little march sometimes when they stood up, and then get ready to get the walking aid if they use one, or carry on walking.
So I've had 2 falls actually. The first fall, it put me very handicapped with the right shoulder and the arm and the hand, and it took many weeks of physiotherapy to get it right. It took a long while of hard work, but eventually it came back, everything was all right. It was awkward dressing myself to begin with, you know, like putting socks on and things. And I find it's all coming back now. I can, you know, it still takes longer to get dressed, you know, putting my trousers on and socks and things like that, which I used to have help with. I can do them now, which I couldn't do before. As much exercises as you can manage, yes, and whatever they show you to do, try and do it at home as well. Keep it going, like, you know. You know, I feel better in myself health-wise. Yeah. And also more secure, you know, I feel safer.
Hip fractures can often occur as a result of a fall and can have a very serious impact on a person's life.
Osteoporosis is a disease of the internal structure of the bones, so it's the microarchitectural structure of the bones. How I explain this to people out in primary care is that your bone structure, when it's healthy, is pretty much the same as the internal part of a crunchy bar. The outer part of it being the little bit that we x-ray, and the internal structure is what we measure to determine whether someone's got osteoporosis or not. So the crunchy bar is very normal. If the bones start to look a little bit more like an aero, with the bubbles being a little bit bigger and the sides being a lot thinner, then the bones are obviously a lot easier to break. The common fracture sites for people that fall with osteoporosis are the hip, the wrist, and sometimes the spine. There are loads of causes of osteoporosis. Sometimes genetically, if your mother or father have had a history of hip fracture, then the likelihood of you having brittle bones is pretty high. There are also lots of drug treatments that can cause brittle bones. The reason they do that is they interfere with the skeleton's cellular activity. Your skeleton is very much a living thing, and the bone turn over all the time. That's why fractures can heal. So therefore, as we get older and the remodelling cycle of bones gets a little bit sluggish, if we all live into our 80s and 90s, the chances are that we're all going to have osteoporosis.
Diet also plays an important part in keeping bones strong and healthy.
As far as diet goes, you need a good calcium intake. But for your body to use that calcium, you also need vitamin D. So being out in the fresh air and getting your sunlight is absolutely vital, but don't burn yourself. There's the obvious dairy products that are rich in calcium, milk, cheese, etc. If you can try and eat a yoghurt a day, that helps too. But as I say, you need to be able to utilise that calcium. So you need the vitamin D from the sunlight, and also dark green vegetables are very useful as well. Lifestyle plays a big part in your general health. Smoking in particular does affect the remodelling of the internal structure of your bones. So smoking is absolutely no. As far as alcohol consumption goes, anything in moderation is usually acceptable. But obviously an overindulgence in alcohol will not only lead you to falling, but it affects your liver and the general metabolism of your vitamin D and subsequently your calcium.